In the heart of Africa lies Rwanda, a nation whose modern history is marked by extraordinary tragedy and equally extraordinary transformation. At the center of this story stands one of the most influential, controversial, and consequential leaders on the continent, Paul Kagame. Celebrated by some of the visionary who rebuilt Rwanda from the ashes, criticized by others who see him as an authoritarian figure tightening control over every aspect of the state. This is the story of Kagame's rise from a refugee boy in Uganda to rebel commander to the presidency and ultimately to one of the most debated African leaders of the 21st century. Paul Kagame was born on October 23, 1957 in Rwanda's southern province, but soon after, political tensions exploded. The violent ethnic unrest of 1959 forced hundreds of thousands of Tutsis, including Kagame's family, to flee the country. Kagame was only a toddler when he arrived in Uganda, joining a generation of young Rwandan refugees growing up in camps, often stateless, often marginalized. Life in exile shaped him deeply. He witnessed discrimination, poverty, and violence first-hand experience that would later fuel his determination to fight for the right of return for Rwandan refugees. Teachers and childhood friends recall a quiet, disciplined boy, reserved, observant, and unusually focused. A personality many say foreshadowed the man he would later become. During this time, Kagame also met Fred Rikwema, another Rwandan refugee who would become both a mentor and a close ally.
I first got to know the late Major General Fred Rikwema in 1963 when we met in one of the refugee camps in Uganda where we were both living as refugees. That was at first time in Ankole, in a place called Nshungezi. Then we grew up together in that camp. Then we shifted and went to Toro in another camp in a place called Gahunje near Kamwenje. District headquarters, and all those years we grew up together. We studied together in a primary school. We only separated when I went to senior secondary school in Intare in Mbarara, and later on he went to Mbarara High School. But we were not in the same class in primary. There were some difficulties. We used to face a lot of difficulties in paying school fees and so on and so forth, and many times people used to miss years and were not able to continue the studies straight away. So that's how we had a difference I was a bit ahead of him.
Together, they dreamed of a Rwanda where Tutsis could live without fear. The seeds of rebellion were quietly being planted. In the late 1970s, Uganda entered a turbulent era. As conflicts escalated, Yoweri Museveni began organizing guerrilla movement to overthrow the Ugandan government. Kagame joined this uprising, the National Resistance Army, or what is known as NRA. Here he earned a reputation, a meticulous planner, a disciplined fighter, a man willing to sacrifice everything for the cause. By the mid-1980s, Kagame and many other Rwandan refugees had risen through the NRA ranks. Museveni's victory in 1986 marked a turning point not just for Uganda but for the future of Rwanda. With newfound military experience, Kagame and his fellow refugees turned their attention to a mission they had long carried in their heads: running to Rwanda by force if necessary. In 1987, exiles formed a political and military organization, the Rwandan Patriotic Front, the RPF. Its goal was simple but ambitious: to secure the right of return for Rwandan refugees and to challenge the government of Juvenal Abirimana, whose politics marginalized Tutsis for decades. Fred Rikwema became the charismatic leader of the Rwandan Patriotic Front, or what we call RPF. Kagame, ever the strategist, became head of the intelligence. In October 1st, 1990, the RPF launched an invasion from Uganda into Rwanda. It marked the beginning of a new chapter, one that would change the destiny of the entire country. But the mission faltered almost immediately. Within days, Fred Rikwema was killed under mysterious circumstances. The fledgling rebellion stood on the brink of collapse. At the time of the invasion, Kagame was in the United States receiving military training. When he heard the news, he abandoned the program and immediately returned to Africa. His arrival transformed the rebellion. He reorganized the troops, instilled discipline, and launched a long guerrilla war that would define Rwanda's future. Around 1994, Rwanda experienced one of the darkest chapters in the human history. Tensions in Rwanda continued to rise. On April 6, 1994, a plane carrying President Abiy was shot down. What followed was one of the most horrifying events of the late 20th century, the Rwanda genocide.
When people talk about genocide, when people talk about killings that took place in Rwanda, they are real, they are not just stories. About 1 million people were killed. Up to now, mass graves are being discovered everywhere all over the country. Nobody has even, actually, 1 million is just an estimation. Nobody has put the figures together to know exactly how many people died. But anyway, irrespective of the numbers, this kind of act is an act that cannot go unchecked, is not an act that can go on without having those people who are responsible held accountable.
As the genocide unfolded, Kagame's RPF launched a decisive military campaign to stop the killings. Village by village, town by town, they advanced, facing both the genocidal forces and the immense tragedy unfolding around them. By July 1994, the RPF took control of Kigali, effectively ending the genocide. The images of Rwandan afterward were almost unimaginable. Entire communities wiped out, millions displaced, a nation traumatized to its core. Kagame emerged from this period as the most powerful figure in Rwanda. But rebuilding the country would require more than military victory. It would require reinventing the nation itself. After the genocide, Rwanda was in ruins. Institutions had collapsed, infrastructure was destroyed, trust among communities was shattered. Kagame became vice president and minister of defense, though many considered him the de facto leader. The new government focused on unity, reconciliation, and preventing future divisions. The Gaskaka courts were introduced to process the overwhelming number of genocide-related cases, an effort to combine justice with community healing. At the same time, the government cracked down on hate speech and ethnic identification, pushing a national identity that transcended Hutu and Tutsi lines. Economically, Kagame embraced modernization, promoting foreign investment, fighting corruption, and investing heavily in technology and public services. Over the next 2 decades, Rwanda would become known for rapid development, clean streets, and one of the lowest corruption levels in Africa. The transformation was dramatic, but not without controversy. In 2000, Kagame officially became president of Rwanda. He positioned himself as the leader who would secure stability, growth, and long-term national unity. Under his leadership, Rwanda saw expanding healthcare access, improvements in education, rising life expectancy, major infrastructure projects, increasing international recognition, among others. The capital, Kigali, became a symbol of order and progress. The economy grew rapidly, and Rwanda began to brand itself as a hub for technology and innovation. Yet Kagame's presidency has also been marked by criticism. Journalists and human rights organizations frequently accuse the government of suppressing dissent.
Half of my life, I've been living in trenches, not sure of living to the next day. I didn't fight to be the president of my country. Never. It came by accident, I think. So I was fighting for my own rights, which anyone in any human rights organization could not give me. And even now cannot give me or cannot give Rwandans. So it's cynical and absurd that anyone would just be there talking about violations, me as the leader of my own people, to be accused of violating their rights. It's just an absurd insult. But my answer is simple, is to do my best to serve my people the best way they can be served. That is the answer.
Kagame, however, argues that Rwanda's fragile history demands firm leadership to prevent instability. In 2015, a constitutional referendum allowed him to potentially remain in power until 2034. He won the subsequent elections with extremely high percentages number that prompted further debate about the nature of Rwanda's political environment. Kagame's influence extends far beyond Rwanda's borders. He has been a central figure in East African politics and has played major roles in African Union reforms, peacekeeping missions, and economic integration. However, Rwanda's involvement in neighboring Democratic Republic of Congo has drawn international scrutiny. The Rwandan government has denied many allegations, while critics argue that Kagame's regional strategy has both stabilized and destabilized the region at different times.
So let me ask this directly, Mr. President. Today, on the 3rd of February, does Rwanda currently have any troops at all in Eastern DRC?
I don't know.
You're the commander-in-chief.
Yeah, there are many things I don't know. But if you want to ask me, is there a problem in Congo that concerns Rwanda and that Rwanda would do anything to protect itself? I'd say 100%.
Does this risk a war in the region?
I don't know. I don't think anybody is interested in war. I even don't think Tshisekedi is interested in war himself. But he has been encouraged in that direction by people showing up to fight for him his wars.
In Washington, D.C., United States of America, a nation often at the center of global diplomacy, leaders gathered for a moment shaped by urgency, history, and hope. At the center of the discussion stands a peace agreement, a commitment aimed at reducing hostilities, supporting regional cooperation, and advancing political solutions to the conflict in Eastern Congo. President Paul Kagame's participation in this signing reflects Rwanda's stated commitment to dialogue and regional stability. The agreement represents a shared recognition that peace in Democratic Republic of Congo is essential to peace across Central and East Africa. Paul Kagame is a family man, and his personal life took a defining turn when he met Janet Jiramogi, who was a Tutsi. Janet would become more than a spouse. She evolved into a public figure in her own right, championing education, women's empowerment, and reconciliation in post-genocide Rwanda through initiatives like the Imbuto Foundation and social outreach programs that touched countless lives. Together, they raised 4 children, a family rooted in both tradition and modernity. Public life of the Kagame family has always been balanced with privacy. Though Rwanda's political arena is one of the intense scrutiny, the president has often shielded his family from the spotlight, ensuring their education and well-being remained paramount. Yet the children have not been distanced from national life in various capacities, from supporting campaigns to engaging in social causes. They have participated in the story of Rwanda's ongoing transformation. Behind the powerful public image of Rwanda's president stands a family shaped by history, turbulence, and bound by shared purpose. A wife whose compassion complements a leader's resolve. Children educated across continents, rooted always in the land of their birth. A family whose story reflects Rwandans' own resilient and hopeful. Paul Kagame's legacy and that of his family is not simply political, it is human. It is woven from the threads of exile and return, of personal devotion and national ambition. In understanding the man, we come closer to understanding the nation he leads and the family that stands with him. Paul Kagame is also a die-hard fan of the Arsenal Football Club.
The better we meaning Arsenal, the better we do, we perform towards getting the ultimate prize, it brings more dividends. Absolutely. So imagine in next towards this year.
Kagame remains one of Africa's most recognizable leaders, welcomed internationally as a reformer, especially in economic circles, yet debated fiercely for his governance style. Paul Kagame's rise is a story like few others, from refugee to rebel commander to the leader who stopped a genocide to the president who reshaped a nation. His legacy is complex. For many, he is the architect of Rwanda's stability and progress, a leader who transformed a shattered country into one of Africa's fastest growing economies. For others, he is a symbol of authoritarian rule, where political freedom is limited and dissent comes at a high price. What is undeniable is that Kagame has altered the course of Rwanda's history, and as Rwanda continues its journey, the story of Paul Kagame will continue to spark debate, admiration, and critical reflection. The rise of Paul Kagame is the story of a man shaped by exile, forged by war, defined by national trauma, and propelled into global prominence. Whether seen as a visionary or a strongman or both, his impact on Rwanda and the region will be felt for generations.